This is a production of Cornell University.
We've been very lucky on the Fishkill farms not to have any severe effects from the big storms of last year. But our neighbors have certainly had a lot of trouble. Across the river in Ulster County there was tremendous damage. Right. And it's not only from the Irene storm and the hurricanes, it was also there have been wind and hail events throughout the last couple of years that have periodically caused havoc.
Also.
And the October snowstorm knocked over a lot of trees as well, and broke a lot of branches. So yes, there have been quite a few events that are quite severe, and we're seeing big swings on the rainfall side as well, between drought and prolonged periods of extremely heavy rainfall. I think as an orchard we're very vulnerable. We have our whole livelihood is on the line. As a fruit farm, we have a lot of crop that is dependent on the blossom occurring at the right time, pollination, not having severe hail events during the growth of the fruit crop, and then finally there not being too much wind during the final pre-harvest period, so that the crop remains on the trees until it's ripe. So yes, there's a tremendous risk throughout, and that's not to mention diseases and all the other downsides. We've been lucky with the vegetable crop for the reason that we produce multiple successions of the same crop. So we're marketing in the farmers markets and locally here on the farm, and planting, every 2 weeks there's a new crop going in the ground. That means that we're spreading our risk quite dramatically. We also have some other bed shaping and soil working techniques that seem to avoid us getting into a situation where we can't get into the land and produce a crop so far. We are gradually planning to deal with erratic weather events. The biggest thing that we've done so far is to put in an irrigation system. You can see around here the drip lines that are laid on the ground with the small trees. We actually succeeded last year in putting in a system that has the potential to irrigate the entire farm once we have all the blocks hooked up to it and the drip tape laid down in the orchard. We're also gradually putting in a trellis system that will help support the small trees. We're going to a more dense format for the orchard. We have diversified water sources for our irrigation, for the same reason that we have so much rainfall variability. So we do draw from a small creek. We have several ponds and a couple of wells. And in addition to the irrigation, using this is now more affects the greenhouse, the vegetable operation, but we're using greenhouses to balance, for example, with the tomatoes. Rather than having our entire tomato crop out in the field, we're putting a portion of it in a greenhouse to balance that. And then for the first time this coming year, we will grow some small fruit in a high tunnel. So a high tunnel looks a lot like a greenhouse. It's not heated. This is the difference. It's not heated, and it's really a 3-season or even 2-season, but really a 3-season cover to regulate number 1, temperature variation, and number 2, water or rainfall, so that we can make sure that the crop, for example, with small fruit, and cherries is a good example, regulate the amount of water that the crop gets, and prevent, in so doing, prevent the fungus problems that one would ordinarily have with those cherries. So from a farming point of view, I think the most valuable information we could get from Cornell is on varieties that will be adapted for the next 20 years of, climatic variations that would be best adapted as we're planting new blocks out every season. An issue that is perhaps most critical in the whole issue of adapting to climate change, and that is management. And it's not just what the choices of what you plant and how you farm, it's also improving management strategies, techniques, and keeping a closer control on everything that you do on the farm, record keeping, being very precise about one's activities. I think that certainly our focus is how we can manage with what we have. We're producing a variety of crops for a fabulous market in New York City. There are lots of people who need to eat, and we're lucky with our location. So what we're interested in doing is adapting to whatever comes our way and making sure we can manage through that. We don't feel like, as one farm operation, we can necessarily influence the climate change itself. We'd rather manage the effects that we're feeling. Yeah. So on the question of whether climate change is caused by human influence, human activity or not, we feel like that's not a concern that we are going to address here on the farm. We are very much more interested in addressing the effects of the climate change and what we can do to deal with it.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.